students, how are you? I hope you all are fit and fine. Students, myself Priyanka Joshi, as you know, I am your biology teacher. So students, let's start with today's topic. Students, in our previous video, we have discussed the chapter, the fundamental unit of life and biology. So in that, we have taken almost completed the chapter and taken the points that are the what is cell, multicellular and unicellular organisms, prokaryotes and eukaryote cells, and the different cell organelles such as mitochondria, ribosome, lysosomes, Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum that we have done in our previous video. So today we are going to taking some important points related with this chapter, that are the, you have seen here, these are the some pending topics of this lecture. That is, the first one is diffusion, second one is osmosis, and the types of solutions. The first one is hypertonic solution, hypertonic solution, and the isotonic solution. Now the last one is the plasmolysis. Today we are going to taking these topics. So students, let's have a quick review of these topics. So first of all, we are going to discuss the diffusion. What do you mean by the diffusion? So student, diffusion is the movement of the substances from higher concentration to its lower concentration. There is a movement of substances. It means the diffusion takes place in solid, liquid and gases. Okay, so this is the diffusion. So let's take some examples of diffusion. I am trying to explain you diffusion in a simple way. Students, you are using in your daily life the deo, and when I use this deo, when I press this deo, see, I press it in this corner of this room. After some time, the particles that are present inside the bottle of deo, the gaseous particles, diffuses in the surroundings. Now I am smelling the fragrance of this deo. So this is the diffusion. Okay. Now take another example of diffusion, that in our house, when we use the dhoop agarbatti in puja samagri, so when we burn them, the particles of the agarbatti and the dhoops diffuses in our home. So this is the another example of diffusion. So diffusion takes place in solid, liquid or gaseous particles. Another is the osmosis. Now what is the osmosis? There is only one major difference between the osmosis and the diffusion. Osmosis takes place between the water molecules, or you can say the solvent particles. In the process of osmosis, the water molecules passes from its higher concentration to its lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. In the process of osmosis, the selective membrane, or you can say the semi-permeable membrane, is present, from where the osmosis or the movement of particles takes place. Clear? In detail, I have discussed it later through the small videos. I hope you will understand it well. Now, the next is types of solution. Generally, there are three types of solution: hypotonic, hypertonic and isotonic. Now, first, what do you mean by the hypotonic solution? Students, hypo means less. The solution that is less in concentration, it is the hypotonic solution. Clear? So in the hypotonic solution, the water molecules moves inward. Okay, concentration क्या है उसमें? Less है. And the next one is the hypertonic. Hyper means more amount, more concentration. Okay, so in this the solution is more concentrated. So Let's take some examples of diffusion. I'm trying to explain you diffusion in a simple way. Students, you are using in your daily life the DO, and when I use this DO, when I press this DO, see, I press it in this corner of this room. After some time, the particles that are present inside the bottle of DO, the gaseous particles, diffuses in the surroundings. Now I am smelling the fragrance of this DO. So this is the diffusion. Okay. Now takes another example of diffusion, that in our house when we use the dhoop agarbatti in puja samagri, so when we burn them, the particles of the agarbatti and the dhoops diffuses in our home. So this is the another example of diffusion. So diffusion takes place in solid, liquid or gaseous particles. Another is the osmosis. Now what is the osmosis? There is only one major difference between the osmosis and the diffusion. Osmosis takes place between the water molecules, or you can say the solvent particles. In the process of osmosis, the water molecules passes from its higher concentration to its lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. In the process of osmosis, the selective membrane, or you can say the semi-permeable membrane, is present, from where the osmosis or the movement of particles takes place. Clear? In detail, I have discussed it later through the small videos. I hope you will understand it well. Now, the next is types of solution. Generally, there are three types of solution: hypotonic, hypertonic and isotonic. Now, first, what do you mean by the hypotonic solution? Students, hypo means less. The solution that is less in concentration, it is the hypotonic solution. Clear? So in the hypotonic solution, the water molecules moves inward. Okay, concentration क्या है उसमें? Less है. And the next one is the hypertonic. Hyper means more amount, more concentration. Okay, so in this, the solution is more concentrated. The water molecules moves out from the cell. Wait. So in the hypertonic solutions, the movement of water molecules takes place from the cell to the solution. This is the hypertonic solution. Next one is the isotonic solution. Student, iso means same. So in the isotonic solution, the equilibrium is maintained. There is equal amount of transfer of water molecules from cell to solution and from solution to cell. So the net transfer or net movement of molecules is 0 in case of isotonic solution. So the last topic is plasmolysis. So student, what do you mean by the plasmolysis? Plasmolysis, actually the shrinkage of protoplasm, or you can say the separation of protoplasm from the cell wall. Okay, when the cell is turgid, fully turgid, its protoplasm starts losing solution from to outside, and the protoplasm shrinks and come in the corner of the cell, and it becomes flaccid. This is the plasmolysis. Now student, we will discuss these topics later with the help of videos and the PPT. Please listen it carefully and understand it.
So students, let's start with diffusion. Now there is a diffusion of definition: the net movement of particles from an area of higher concentration to an area of low concentration. Okay, in this you have seen in left side there are the higher concentration, the particles are more in number and the movement of the particles start towards the right. So there is an random movement of particles in that no energy is required for the movement of particles. So this is known as passive movement. So in there is some another movement in which the energy is required. It is the active movement. So this is the passive process, which means that no energy is needed for the movement of particles. So this is simple the diffusion. Next is osmosis. Osmosis is the passage of water from a region of high water concentration to a region of low water concentration through a special membrane. That membrane is known as semi-permeable membrane, or you can say the selective membrane. This membrane cannot pass every molecules. The selective molecules pass through the membrane. A membrane which permits the entry and exit of some material in the cell is called the semi-permeable membrane. It also prevents the movement of some materials. The selective materials passes through this membrane. Next, with the help of this figure, you can differentiate between the osmosis and the diffusion. First of all, see the figure of osmosis. In this figure, you have seen in the left side there is a solution and in the right side there is a pure water. So, the semi-permeable membrane is present between these two solutions. So, the osmosis is the movement of water molecules from its higher concentration to its lower concentration. So, from pure water, the water moves towards the solution with the help of a semi-permeable membrane. This is the osmosis. And now see the next figure, that is of diffusion. In this, the particles moves from higher concentration to lower concentration. In this, no membrane is present in it. It takes place randomly. So, this is the major difference between the osmosis and the diffusion. Now, as I told you earlier, there are three types of solution. So, discuss one by one. The first solution is hypotonic solution. In this solution, the surrounding cell which has higher water concentration than that in the cell. So, the water molecules are free to pass across the cell membrane in both the directions. Okay, but more water will come into the cell than will leave. Okay, so the hypotonic solution is that solution in which inside the cell there is a less amount of water molecule. It is less concentrated. So when it placed in a dilute solution, the water molecules comes inside the cell. Okay, the net result is that the water enters the cell and the cell is likely to swell up. This is the hypotonic solution. Now the next is hypertonic solution. In this solution, when the medium surrounding a cell has lower concentration of water than that in the cell, it is said to be hypertonic. Okay, so water crosses the membrane in both the direction, but this time more water leaves the cell than enters it. In this case, the water comes out from the cell in the surrounding medium. Therefore, here the cell will shrink because it loses the water. So, this is the hypertonic solution. Next is isotonic solution. In this, the equilibrium is maintained. So, what is isotonic solution? When the medium surrounding a cell has the same concentration of water as that in the cell, it is said to be isotonic. The water crosses the cell membrane in both the direction, but the amount going in is the same as the amount going out. This is the main thing. The same amount of water enters inside the cell and the same amount of water comes out from the cell. So there is no overall movement of water. The cell will stay the same size. This is the isotonic type of solution. Now, what is diffusion? Definition of diffusion is movement of substances from high concentration towards the region of low concentration. This is the process known as the diffusion. So, simple, the movement from higher to lower, and we can use the term substance. Diffusion takes place in solid, liquid and gaseous medium. So, first of all, you can understand what is the high concentration and what is the low concentration. So, see, this is a cell and outside the cell there are large number of particles present. So, the concentration of particles is more than the concentration present, these particles present inside the cell. So, outside the cell there are large number of particles. So, you can understand with this figure. So, there is a higher concentration outside the cell and the lower concentration inside the cell. So, in the process of diffusion, what happens? The molecules, the substances inside the cell comes from the outside medium. Okay, this you can understand by this. Now, see, in this the particles come inside the cell. So, this is the diffusion. The transfer or movement of substances from high concentration to the region of low concentration. Now students, with the help of a short video, please understand the difference between the osmosis and the diffusion. The video is presenting here. Watch it carefully. students, I hope you understand very well with the help of this video. Now here is written the difference between the osmosis and the diffusion. So the osmosis is limited only to the liquid medium, whereas the diffusion takes place in solid, liquid and gases also. Osmosis requires a semi-permeable membrane, whereas in case of diffusion, it not require any kind of membrane. Okay. Next, third is depends on the number of solute particles dissolved in the solvent. Osmosis is depends on the number of solute particles that are dissolved in the solvent, whereas in case of diffusion there is no presence of other particles. Okay, only one medium is present. Osmosis requires water for the movement of particles, whereas diffusion do not require water for the movement of particles. Only the solvent molecules can diffuse in case of osmosis, whereas in diffusion both the molecules that are the solute and the solvent can diffuse. Now the next is the flow of particles occurs only in one direction. In osmosis there is a unidirectional flow of particles, but in the case of diffusion the particles occurs in all direction, as I have gave the example of deo, perfumes, scent. Okay, the particles of them disperse all around the environment. So in case of diffusion there is a movement of particles in all the direction, whereas in case of osmosis there is an unidirectional flow of particles. So this is all about the diffusion and the osmosis. I hope you understand it very well. Okay. Now come in the next topic, that is the plasmolysis. Now the plasmolysis. What is plasmolysis? It is the phenomenon by which a plant cell shrink away from the cell wall when it loses water by the osmosis. This is the plasmolysis. In this, the protoplasm starts separating from the cell wall and is finally completely separated. This condition when a fully turgid, what do you mean by the fully turgid? With swollen protoplasm. The fully turgid cell changes into a flaccid cell. Now, what is flaccid cell? With shrunken protoplasm. The shrink cell is known as the flaccid cell, is called the plasmolysis. I repeat it again. The condition when fully turgid cell changes into a flaccid cell is called plasmolysis, and the cell is called plasmolysed cell. This also proves the exosmosis. Exosmosis means when the water comes out, or you can say the solution comes out from the cell. This is the exosmosis. And when a plasmolysed plant cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, then the flaccid cell again become turgid due to the endosmosis, and the process is called deplasmolysis. Okay, now what are the significance of the plasmolysis? Plasmolysis is used to kill weeds and earthworms in lawn tennis court by salting. It is used to preserve dried meat and dried fruits, as their salting kills the bacteria and fungal spores by exosmosis. Okay. Now the difference between the endosmosis and the exosmosis. So what is endosmosis? Endosmosis refers to the movement of water or solvent inside the cell. Endo means inside. And the next is exosmosis. Exosmosis refers to the osmosis towards the outside of the cell when the cell start losing the water. It is the exosmosis. So clearly you can say that water moves into the cell in case of endosmosis, whereas in case of exosmosis the water moves out of the cell. Next, endosmosis occurs when cells are placed in hypotonic solution. हाइपोटोनिक सॉल्यूशन में ही एंडोस्मोसिस की प्रोसेस होगी. Clear? And the exosmosis occurs when the cells are present in hypertonic solution. Now, the next difference is endosmosis occurs when the solute concentration of the surrounding is less than the solute concentration inside the cell. Okay, when the cell inside the cell is concentration is less, then only the solvent particles moves inside the cell, so the endosmosis takes place. And an exosmosis occurs when the solute concentration of the surrounding is higher than the solute concentration inside the cell. Next, water potential of the surrounding is higher than that of the cytosol. In comparison to the cytosol, the water potential of the surrounding is higher, and in case of exosmosis, water potential of the surrounding is less than that of the cytosol. In case of endosmosis, the cell may swell, it becomes turgid, whereas in case of exosmosis, the cells may shrink, it loses the water and it comes in the condition of flaccid. So, the examples of endosmosis takes place in absorption of capillary water from the soil by the roots and the entrance of water into the xylem vessels. This is the examples of endosmosis. And in exosmosis, the example is movement of water from the root hair cells to the cortical cells of the root. This is the example of exosmosis. Here the water moves out from the root hair cells. Okay, this is all about the exosmosis and the endosmosis.
So students, I hope you understand today's lecture very well. If you are facing any difficulty, any kind of problem, please ask me. Okay, so this is all for today. Goodbye, take care, be safe and be healthy. Thank you very much.